Hello, and welcome to another Terrace House tier list. This time for Aloha State. And wow, it's been a little while actually since I've watched this. And I have to say, now that I'm looking back, it was actually quite a struggle to get through everything. Although I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the sentiment online that folks have that this was, something worth skipping, just a terrible season. There were moments in Aloha State for sure, and I think a lot of it revolves around the setting, really. But at the same time, that can also be sort of a downfall of the series, in my opinion. But we'll get to that, I'm sure. But yes, I can't recall exactly how long it's been since I finished the show. I'm kind of in the middle of um, I can't remember what it's called, but the one where they're in the woods, sort of in a cabin. It's not a cabin, but it's a really nice house actually. But oh god, I really don't know what it's called. But it's the following series of Terrace House, and I'm enjoying that much more, to be honest. But with all that being said, I think we should get on into it because I did find, especially sort of like as an American person viewing this, it was definitely interesting, especially compared to how I felt about boys and girls in the city. But like I said, it was called Opening New Doors. Opening New Doors is the one where they're in the woods and stuff. But anyway, Aloha State. Let's get into it. I'm gonna go in order. I think again in order of appearance, and let's just start off with Lauren because I mean she was in a lot of episodes. Now that I look back on it, I really felt like she wasn't, but she stayed longer than Eric did, um, which kind of surprised me looking back. But obviously she made an impression. She was definitely the sort of the main character of the early parts of the series, I have to say. And I think she kind of trailed off a little bit toward the end. Definitely lost her confidence and her sparkle to some extent. But wow, I can't remember her doing anything that was like that would really bring her down. And she was, really an interesting person to watch on screen for sure, especially being so young. 18, you're bound to make mistakes and you're bound to have a hard time living with people. Now that I'm thinking back, there was one instance where there was sort of a quarrel between her and I think it was Avian and maybe Naomi too. That they were gonna go to do Thanksgiving all together. I kind of remember being on Lauren's side for that, but because she was going to see her family and she didn't feel like she could get out of it. Um, Although she probably could have communicated it better overall, but I totally see how being 18 and being out of the house for the very first time, and she has dinner with her grandma every Friday, like consistently. Like the girl is she's young and she's used to being a part of her main family. So I can totally see how it might be difficult for her to communicate that. She has different priorities now at this point in her life, and with all that being said, I do think Lauren probably goes A for me. She just barely misses out on S, to be honest, because I mean, there were a lot of moments with her. I can't even, like, off the top of my head now, bring up a lot of them. But, she was definitely nice to watch on screen. And I think, if she had stayed a little bit longer, I can definitely see her having been moved up to S tier, depending on what might have happened. But she never really got her, like, big moment. Um, and yeah, definitely one of my more favorite people to see in this series. But let's keep going. I think with this series in general, I'll probably move through people a little bit quicker. Like I said, just because I'm going to really throw things that are just at the top of my head at this point, given that it's been a little while and I can't recall like very specific episode instances. So yeah, let's keep going with Yuya. You know, Yuya, absolutely. Also, someone who was young, who was flawed, that came across on screen for sure. But honestly, for the way that he carried himself to be 19 throughout most of this show, I thought he was fine. I thought he showed a lot of growth, and he was going to school. I'm not sure exactly what happened toward the end, but I can totally see how, he was growing in his relationship, and was also just like a generally nice person, someone who checked in generally, for the most part with people. I did feel like he was kind of bullying Yusuke a little bit in the beginning, but I can see how, you know, they would just be like butting heads as good friends, although I'm not sure that Yusuke might have felt that way. We'll maybe get to that in a little bit as well, but to be honest, Yuya was a really important character in this series. Not character, again, participant, I suppose, in this series. But yeah, I'm going to throw him into A as well, to be honest. Maybe that's being a little generous. Uh, Now that I'm thinking about it, actually, I think I have to move him to B just because I feel like I don't want to put everyone in A. Um, I think it's being a little bit generous. He's definitely B, but could totally be A as well. Maybe I'll think about it a little bit more. But I'm gonna go on to Avian, and I mean I can't remember exactly how her relationships lined up with, like, maybe when Anna came into the house or when Taishi came, but overall, her and Yuya together were kind of like a rock for this season. Definitely like the couple to look at. And honestly, I felt like when they left, it was such a void, and and they got replaced by two people who maybe definitely shifted the vibe of this series. I have to say. So I definitely feel like Avian, just like being the local person, being the one who was like totally fluent in Japanese, as well as English, and could sort of bridge the gap very, very easily for people, being like, I'm from here, I know people, my mom owns a business, like I'm trying to start a business. She was very active, and also I felt like pretty warm, in welcoming the people who had never been to Hawaii before, or had never like permanently lived there. So, I have to put her in A because she really had it all. She might even go up to S for me, to be honest. She was kind of, like I said, like a rock of this series, and it was definitely a little tough to see her and Yuya leave together. And also their relationship was really nice. I don't know what more to say beyond that, but they were very clear in their sort of like hang-ups, and still made it work, and still maybe even did long distance at the end. I can't remember, but definitely like a relatable couple of folks, and I was happy to watch them on screen. So we're still here in the original characters. I mean, participants, and we'll bring over to Eric. Eric, I think he's got to go in A too. Although, like, maybe he could have been a little bit better in terms of being like sort of. I think he got pinned into being the house leader initially. He was the oldest, I think, and also was like the most active, and was like, I'm the guy who is a carpenter, and I'm gonna start a cafe, and me and my friend are doing all these things, and and he was really like a big brother to everyone, but at the same time, he maybe could have been like a little bit more of a positive influence, I guess. Definitely, it like didn't take on the same role that like Han-san did in Boys and Girls in the City. But that's not to be expected of everyone, for sure. But I have to put Eric in A just because generally he was really fun to watch. Especially especially later on, I think when he made his like sort of guest appearances after leaving the house, I actually found those instances to be maybe even more interesting. than when he was actually there day to day. Because overall, I mean, when he was in the house, it was kind of like, he was there, but he wasn't always a conversation starter. He wasn't always at the center of the action. But I still got to put him in A overall. Naomi, where are you? Naomi, I mean, I'll put her in B too. She never did anything wrong, from what I can remember. And she was just like generally nice, and had a good time and got to live her experience that she wanted in Hawaii with everyone. And overall, her and Yuya were really good friends. I can't remember her ever being just like a bad influence on anyone or not showing up when she needed to. So, overall, I have to give it to her. I think she had a job too in the U.S. She really improved her English. I remember that. Her and Lauren ended up being good friends, from what I remember. So, overall, she's just like a B, a solid B. Definitely not like a neutral character, totally positive, but at the same time, just wasn't exactly around enough for it to be super memorable, but also right, because she left first, I think, or she left with Yusuke actually. So let's move on to Yusuke in that case. Yusuke, I mean, honestly, I think I'll put him in A too. Although, like, it's a little bit tough to do that, to compare him to these folks, because he wasn't as fun to watch. But at the same time, this is a guy, this is a kid, really, who's clearly going through a lot, who's clearly like wrestling with these questions of who am I as a person. You're 18, he's still in high school, literally going to high school while he's in this house with these people who are complete strangers to him, and also wasn't the most self-confident guy. Immediately got pinned down into this role as sort of like a sort of like a third tier guy on the guy's side. Was always like a little more submissive and trying to just fit in. So overall, I felt like that wasn't really fair to him. He definitely could have done with a little bit more guidance. It would have been nice if Eric was like more of a big brother to him, like he was with Yuya. But it wasn't clicking, obviously, and honestly, he stuck it out. The kid really put himself out there, especially with the music, and just like trying to figure out who he is, and but being observant, waiting his turn. And I gotta give it to him, because honestly, a lot of people at 18 probably wouldn't even have been able to do some of the things that he did, especially with just like the commitments. I mean, overall, you have to think about, this guy was playing music, he was doing concerts, he was going to high school, which in and of itself is also like an enormous challenge, even if he was at the end. And from what I remember, they were always talking about how he never got to sleep. He went to Japan once, and this is all within the space of, he was only there for 10 episodes. So within 10 weeks, all of that stuff happened. And, overall, maybe I will leave him an A, just because it was quite, I have to say, he grew. He grew a lot. And I think that's probably the highest quality of things that I'm looking for. Because at the end of the day, we all want to root for these characters, right? We all want to cheer them on. Not characters, for these participants. We all want to cheer them on in their time on the show. And I think for the most part, that's like the highest quality that we're really looking for in terms of judging folks. It's like, are you growing in this experience? Just even in the sense that, like, are you able to live with people and be affable, and be a good help, be someone who's productive and contributing to something bigger than themselves. And I think that Yusuke fits that bill really well. So moving on, continuing in this order. So I think that Yusuke and Naomi left, and then Anna and Taishi showed up together. That's right. So Anna, oh man, Anna, wow. I really didn't like her for quite a while. I really thought that she was like a bad person. Probably right after, oh man, well, there were a few instances, right, and where I thought that she was being really disingenuous. Um, But I think, looking back, I can probably say there were just instances where she felt a little bit like inadequate, and definitely like took a back seat to some of the other folks who had things going on, especially when Taishi stopped giving her attention. I think overall, this is just like a portrait of someone who is flawed, and we just got to witness that on screen a little bit. But I won't say that she's a bad person. I won't say that she's like a problem starter. I think in the end they all managed to make up. So, I some of the instances where she had a hard time getting along with, maybe it was Lauren and Avian, I think were together with her for the most part. I think those issues were able to get resolved, and overall, she just didn't really get what she wanted out of the experience. It seemed like, of course, in the end, she got really screwed by another participant who we'll get to. So I have to feel for her a little bit, and in the end, she really. I don't know. I definitely I liked her at the end. I liked seeing her again while she was not living in the house, but she was showing up. It was always nice to see her, even though those instances were pretty brief for the most part. So I think she goes B. Just for me, in that sense, she goes B. And Taishi, the guilty samurai. Wow, what a guy. I mean, let's be honest. This guy was the main character of this series. He was I think by far the most episodes. He was kind of like, you can't really say that he doesn't deserve to be an S tier, because when we're talking about it, this is a reality TV show at the end of the day here, folks. And when you have a guy who's constantly bringing just controversy and attention to himself throughout the series and throughout these, imagine like he was there for 27 weeks he lived in this house. Uh, that's more than half a year, right? I think that's more than half a year. So, in that sense, uh, the guy was the backbone of the series, but was also very flawed. Let's be honest. In that sense, Taishi was absolutely a guy who was a little bit overconfident, a little bit inconsiderate of others, for sure. Maybe even you could say it displayed some misogynistic behavior. The guy was absolutely problematic. But at the same time, it did seem like he grew as a person to some extent, became a little bit more self-aware, but also just like you have to kind of cheer for him a little bit because he got what he wanted in the end, and also the relationship between him and Chikako, who we'll get to, was obviously really nice to see. But at the same time, the guy is flawed. I kind of want to put him in A, but I just know that this is sort of Taishi. Like, what if there was no Taishi in this series? There would be no reason to watch Aloha State, to be perfectly honest. The first few episodes were really fun, and like kind of an interesting like little mini series if you want to cap it off when Yusuke and Naomi left. But Taishi was the whole show after that, so he's got to go S. Okay, who's next? Guy. Guy also has to go S. Because Guy did probably nothing wrong at all. I mean, maybe I'm like just remembering the more favorable qualities of him, but the guy was fun to watch on screen. He clearly was not playing a character, even though like somebody could have written the part of who he is as a person. So with that being said, the guy is just like he's entertainment, man. Guy was entertainment, and he just made watching this a whole lot better. I have to say. So Yeah, he's got to go S too. I mean, again, like I just for the simple qualification, like not only was he entertaining and really interesting to watch, and also like clearly grew significantly throughout the experience, but also he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't hurt anybody, which is like pretty impressive, to be perfect, especially with the relationship between him and Nikki, who we'll get to. But he definitely like might have crossed the line at some point, but like it just seemed like both of them were kind of okay with it. So Guy is S for me. And again, like moving on to Nikki, I think that like for both of them are quite similar in the sense that like they just had kind of brief overall appearances. I think Guy, you can't really say Guy had like a short time on the show because he was there for 19 weeks, so that's quite a long time. But at the same time, he just like he was always gone, it seemed like, and also it left at a certain point where it was just the right time for him to leave, you know what I mean? So that's all I'll say about Guy at this point. And then Nikki, I think she was there. She was there for 9 weeks, so that's quite a short amount of time. And again, like she just didn't have time to like make her mark and get used to people and sort of like assert herself in the house. I want to move her a little higher, but I have to put her B just because she just wasn't that active and involved in the same way as some other people were. Obviously, I think that is really just down to how long she was able to stay. So, in that sense, like her appearance was not super memorable, but she was definitely fun to watch. Definitely fun to watch, and um, also just like brought some joy to the house for the most part, from what I remember. I can't recall her being super good friends with anyone. Um, but well, except for Guy. But it was really nice to see her in the house. Definitely like a neutral slash super positive participant for sure. Okay. Oh man. I don't. I don't even want to do this one. Okay. She's bottom. She's bottom. She's bottom. Like I wish there was F actually. Maybe I should do that. I don't know how though. So, but like, come on, man. Sherry. Oh man, I've never seen. You know what? Like last time around in Boys and Girls in the City, I really thought like Natsumi was bad, right? I really thought that she was really bad, and I think she was absolutely right. But like Sherry is even worse somehow. Like I've never seen anyone who is so inconsiderate, not self-aware, extremely selfish. Oh my goodness, and just a bad influence on everyone and everything. And I honestly can't believe that she stayed after things blew up. She stayed until the end. I mean, wow. Clearly burned every bridge she could have burned, and still like people had to put a smile on their face and act like nothing was wrong, like, oh, our roommate sucks. But let's go to the beach, like, and have pretend we're having a good time, like, oh my god. Wow, wow, wow. Terrible, terrible person overall. And it's really easy for me to say that, right, like sitting behind a computer screen and talking into a microphone in my room. But I think that in this case, like, you can just clearly see how much she was just a bad influence on people, and also like said certain things that were just totally not true. And oh man, I'm like having a hard time remembering specifics at this point, but like it was so hard to get through those episodes where she was fighting, and also even the episodes where she was like going back and forth, and like, oh man, like uh it was like back and forth on guys, and like was seeing like three different guys at once. Like I had no issue with that at all. It's just like the way she was presenting it to other people. It was so strange, and especially when they all knew Eric, like they all knew who he was, and they all probably met him at a certain point. I think him and Wes were maybe friends, So like, just the way that she was presenting it to other people when she had no real friends and no one who was not going to talk about it. It was like she was inviting the attention on her personal life, but then got really mad when people were when people were trying to quote unquote intervene in her personal life. So I don't know, just somebody who's like, you're either with me or you're against me, and if you're against me, I hate you. And wow, I think who was it that she had a real issue with? I'm trying to remember. Was it Anna? No, they were barely together. I think it might have been. Oh, it was Mariko. Wow, that was really like very at the end too. I mean, we'll get to that with Mariko's discussion, but we're almost done here, so let's keep moving. But wow, I mean, it's really hard to be worse than Natsumi, and Sherry really accomplished that. I mean, that's all I'll say to cap it off. But my goodness, let's keep going. Wes Lee. Ah man, I think I want to put him B, but I'll totally put him C honestly because he just fizzled out at the end. Like and the guy, again, just seemed like a really selfish guy, somebody who was not there for anyone except himself, and I can't say that he grew in this case. I can't say that he came out of the experience of being on Terrace as like a better person than he was coming in. Obviously, again, it's really easy for me to say that, like judging only a few snippets of what actually happened during his time there. But he was on the show for a while. He came in at the same time as Sherry. And I mean, it was just wishy-washy with everyone. Maybe him and Guy were decent friends, if I remember correctly. But like, I can't remember him and Taishi being super close. And you know, and just the way he treated Anna at the end, I just can't get over that. I mean, it's one thing to. I mean, maybe I shouldn't even get into it because I don't remember all the details. But you know, he clearly was not being straight with her, not being honest. And when she confronted him about it, and the way that he let things end, it was so sad for her because he was not giving her the time of day, even like to admit that his faults and say like, yeah, I messed up and I'm sorry because I wasn't considering your feelings. Like, is that so hard, man? I mean, for that I have to drop him down because that was oof. Otherwise he was like fun to watch as an artist, as a musician. Like, that was cool to a large extent, but it just didn't feel like he was there for the fact that he was living together with people. It seemed like he was more interested in building up himself and getting more screen time and building a reputation for himself while being in Hawaii, and the opportunity was there for him and he wasn't interested in making friends or. Well, I think that about sums it up. Okay, Mila. Mila. So I think she was the character, not the character, the participant with the least amount of time there. She was there for 6 episodes. I mean, that's really hard to judge. I'll just put her in B. I mean, she seemed really nice. She seemed really affable, especially for her age. She seemed quite mature considering. I think she was only 19, maybe like about a year younger than Guy. She had a good head on her shoulders, from what I could tell, for the most part, and was like really self-confident. I can't exactly remember why she left when she did, but it did seem like a bit early, to be honest. And I think that about sums it up because I just don't really recall exactly anything in particular. I thought the date with her and Guy was really cute. But otherwise, not too much memorable stuff from Mila. But that's why she's B tier. Okay, I'm gonna take a sip of my drink. Okay, Chikako. Wow, I don't know. I think that overall, okay. No, I mean, she's an A for sure. She's an A. She clearly grew out of the experience. She wasn't even there for that long. She clearly grew, though. I mean, just seeing like the way that she was trying to handle and wrestling with this sort of the divorce. It can't be easy to get divorced, uh, especially like being an immigrant, especially being somebody who is, just like in their late 20s. It's not an easy time to get divorced, I'm sure, especially when you were like getting ready to sort of like really build your life with somebody. At that age, I'm sure it's not easy to bounce back. And she was clearly like grappling with it on screen throughout this whole time. I can't remember exactly when they were had like finalized the divorce, but I thought overall like it was really nice to see that I think she got what she wanted out of being on Terrace House, beyond like the fact that she got into a relationship. uh you know she got what she wanted in the sense that like she got some level of closure and ability to be surrounded by other folks, and like not take her mind off of the you know sort of this big life change, and probably unhappy life change for her. So with that being said, overall she was a really good housemate too, I remember. um and I think a lot of the focus was on her and Taishi, which was fine because they were both very entertaining. They really, I mean, let's be honest, they kind of carried the whole show at the end, which was kind of evident by the way things ended in the last episode, which was, by the way, very anticlimactic. I was finding that hard to watch. That it was like, wow, all these people are not so happy with each other, not so like interested in saying a nice goodbye. So, like, let's just all leave and let these two lovebirds have the house to themselves. You know, which was overall very different from how Boys and Girls in the City ended. Um, But okay, let's keep going. Rio. Oh no. Well, let me do Rio first because oh man, I mean I just put him in B because I don't remember anything about this guy. Was he really there for longer than Mila was on the show? Yeah, he was in 7 episodes and Mila was in 6. Honestly, I think that this guy got screwed, and so did Mariko, really, by the fact that they just were not going to renew the show. Which, if it was doing a little bit better, probably, and getting better ratings, or I don't know exactly what was coming up, but overall, I'm sure that he would have had his moment, but he just didn't. Let's be honest. I can't even remember like why he came or anything of that nature, but you know, he things were going down by the time that both him and Mariko were already there, so they just weren't able to make their mark. And Mariko was totally, it seemed like she was working a lot and just clearly she wasn't making friends, which is honestly, it's just something that, like, Sherry is a terrible person, obviously, uh, and Chikako had her thing going on with Taishi, and they were all working. I can totally see how it just didn't make a lot of sense, and I'm gonna put her in B too because, again, I can't really pass judgment on her as a uh, participant because she wasn't there for that long, and like she barely had any screen time, to be honest. I think the longest screen time she had was during this whole fight situation, um, which I didn't find really to be her fault. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. That's why Wes is in C tier also, because he was really mean to her. Like, she just wanted to go out with you. Like, just, everyone was going out with each other. It was kind of normal thing to do, and he obviously made her feel really unwelcome. I think she also had clearly some self-confidence issues, but beyond that, it's not something she could have, not something she couldn't have grown out of throughout her time on the show, with like some support from people like Wes, who had the opportunity to do that and didn't. And beyond that, I don't think there's really much more to say about Mariko. Um, Let me zoom in a little bit here just so you can see a little bit better. Oh, I should have had it like this the whole time. Anyway. But overall, like I said, I don't think this was a bad watch. I I don't think I would watch it again, but maybe that's just because it hasn't been that long. I would totally watch Boys and Girls in the City again, though. So maybe that's just like me. I think that's the consensus online as well for the most part. Is if you are even remotely a fan of Terrace House, it's like this isn't the series to get into it. Like you don't recommend Aloha State to other people. You're not like, oh, you want to start watching Terrace House? Like, oh, you should start with Aloha State. You know, like I don't personally see how you could really put that together just because it was, I think another issue with this whole situation was just how folks probably it took them a little bit to get over there. Obviously, it was out of Japan, and I'm sure a lot of stuff had to go through the studio. Um, you have producers going back and forth with their bosses in Japan. There's a time difference. Just general things like that. It couldn't have made it easy. So the other thing is like the setting was really great. Obviously, just seeing these young people like getting to live in such a gorgeous area, but at the same time, it looked really difficult to get around. If people were not able to drive, I'm sure it was tough. And actually, I heard from Yusuke in an interview he did at some point. I can't remember when it was, but I watched it recently. He said he had to walk like 30 minutes to get to his bus stop to take the bus to school. Like, oh man, that just sounds like a nightmare, to be honest. And it would like if you saw that hill that their house is on, like yeah, it was a nice house, but the hill was the hill in and of itself made it impossible to walk anywhere. It seemed like so you were either forced to drive, which I'm sure some of them did not have licenses, or uh, I don't know, take Uber and take taxi all the time. But like you see people taking taxi in um, opening new doors, and that just seems like totally fine overall. Because I'm sure that it's always the same taxi driver too. That's another thing. Oh well, maybe we'll get to that in the next review, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been easy to always call a taxi where they were at in Hawaii. Just understanding like how expensive things can be living in Hawaii. So, with that being said, I'm sure it wasn't the most inviting location for folks who were, especially like not able to speak English super well. I'm sure that was a defining factor for them that, they just weren't able to get to everywhere they wanted to go. But maybe that's me reading in too much to the situation. Overall, though, I don't think it was a good and a bad thing for sure. Like, it kind of lost its luster, though. Definitely, like halfway through. So, with all that being said, it is what it is. Aloha State, like 36 episodes is not bad. Maybe they dragged it for a little bit. Obviously, we could have done without the very last part. I think like if they had capped off at like 30 before like Mariko and Rio came, would have been fine. But also like if we wouldn't have had the Chikako and Taichi romance at that point. So then what's really the saving grace of the series? I'm not sure. Well, I think that's enough for now. Overall, again, I don't regret watching it, but I don't think it's the best. It's definitely not as good as Boys and Girls in the City. And like, I haven't totally passed judgment yet on Opening New Doors, but I have to say, Opening New Doors from day one and throughout has been probably much easier to get through in terms of just having more active relationships from the very beginning. Even the setting too, it just made things a little easier overall. And I think that's probably, that has to be something to be said based on the fact that like these producers are choosing who gets to participate in the show. So if they're making bad choices and they're picking bad folks and they're not casting well, I mean, not casting, what is the word? They're like they're not doing good auditions. I'm not sure, but they're not getting the right people in the house. It can really show. And obviously that was the case at the very end, especially of this. But even throughout, sometimes there were just so many dull moments in Aloha State. So yeah, I think that's where we'll cap it off at this point. And I've said what I need to say. Again, I think just overall indicative of the fact that like it took me so long to actually get the energy to want to do this because when I finished Boys and Girls in the City, I was so excited to do this. But when I finished this, I was just kind of like exhausted. It was like, oh, thank God it's over. And I didn't start watching Opening New Doors for I don't know a little while. I was good on Terrace House. I was good on like the feeling of the need for me to get into something again that was in that format was not there. So I was kind of burnt out, I have to say, after looking back on it with Aloha State. But you know, overall there were a lot of good memories, and again, I don't regret watching it. So with that being said, thank you all for watching. If you've gone this far, appreciate you, and looking forward to doing another one when I finish Opening New Doors.